Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Fourth and Gold right here at Beyond the Big Ten. You can follow us at Beyond the Big Ten wherever you get your socials, or follow us on YouTube for this full episode right now. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you had a wonderful holiday, happy, healthy with family. Let's bring in our co-host here to talk some Gophers football. He is that other pregame show's very own CBS Networks and former Gopher himself. It's Brock Vereen. What's up, Brock?
The axe is gone, Joey. The axe is gone. It is no more. The goalposts have been chopped. I'm still trying to recover from that, but as we will discuss a little later in the show, there is a silver lining awaiting at the end of this season. But the axe is gone.
The axe is gone. Gophers fall to the rival Wisconsin Badgers 28-14 over the weekend. Tough loss, tough way to lose to end your season. But we are going to be also dishing out a little bit of a teaser of maybe, I don't know, where to send some Christmas presents in the Colorado State type area. But let's stick to the Axe game itself for right now. Brock, I just want to get your general reaction to just a disappointing loss, obviously to a rival losing the Axe. Just your reaction to the game itself.
It was the perfect way to sum up how the season has gone. There was plenty of good sprinkled in. Just enough good to let you know that if this was consistent, this is a 9-1 football team. But it wasn't consistent, right? So it's that delicate balance of, if you're a bad football team, you can come to terms with it because you say, you know what, it's just not our year. We just have to get better. But throughout the year, there were so many splashes of competence, of greatness at sometimes. And it was just enough to tease you to allow you to be disappointed, right? If there's no expectation, you can't be disappointed. But there was enough there that you just wonder, what was that magic ingredient missing to where it could be consistent? Hats off to Wisconsin, who had a first-year head coach and are going bowling. I can't let the rivalry get in the way of tipping a cap to, I don't know how many first-year coaches take their team to a bowl game. I know it's not a lot of them. So hats off to Luke Fickell. He is building something there. And they had as many injury issues as anyone across the Big Ten. And it was the Braylon Allen show, as is expected. He was very banged up, but he looked healthy. He found something for the final stretch. So credit to them. Credit to Tanner Mordecai, and credit to their defense, who was able to make plays even though Minnesota looked like things were coming together. Wisconsin would make a play and stop it. And that's coaching. That is talent. That is not letting the moment be too big. And credit to them for not resting on their laurels, saying, we're already in a bowl game. All right, we have this little axe thing to play for. No, they wanted that axe, and they came into Minneapolis and took it. And Minnesota has to wait another year before they can take it back.
And that's what's so interesting about the Big Ten West this season, is how chaotic it's been. It's that, Wisconsin and Minnesota, they're not that far apart from each other. They dealt with a lot of the same similar issues. They dealt with injuries at key positions. They dealt with losses that kind of came out of nowhere. They did also kind of deal with, I think it's fair to say that both programs kind of dealt with a little bit of falling short of expectations. And unfortunately, when you lead into that final game, Minnesota, we end up on the short stick of that one. The other part, too, as well, is I just think when you kind of drill in, when you're talking about Minnesota versus Wisconsin, it doesn't take much of a rocket scientist to just go look at the rushing numbers. And when you hold Minnesota, Jordan Newman ran the ball well at times, but they did hold them to 3.8 yards per rush. And then, obviously, as you mentioned, Braylon Allen, when he gets 162 yards on the ground, that sometimes can turn into the tail of the tape.
Exactly, man. Exactly. They were fired up. And again, I want to reemphasize how once you get over that threshold of we're going to a bowl game, but we're not in the mix for the Big Ten West, it's very easy for the NFL-bound dudes to check out. It's very easy for the younger guys to say, all right, well, I'll get my opportunity in spring ball. For right now, I'm thinking about where I'm going for Christmas and winter break. And after the bowl game, we're going to this place. Okay, but they didn't. They stayed locked in, and that is something special. I guess the ups and downs of the Big Ten West is the nicest way to put it. I mean, it is an absolute mess, is the mean way to put it. I will miss it. So farewell to the Big Ten West. You beautiful, beautiful mess. You will be sorely missed, and it just blows my mind. It absolutely blows my mind how close, like you just mentioned, all of these teams are, right? When Wisconsin is at their best, they're the best team in the West. When Minnesota was at their best, they were competing for being the best in the Big Ten West. When Iowa was healthy and they don't turn the ball over, yeah, of course, that's why they're going to the Big Ten championship. I had Purdue and Indiana. When Purdue was clicking like they were against Illinois, when they smoked the Illini, when Purdue was clicking this recent Saturday against Indiana, I'm sitting there thinking, how did this team not win the West? It's just a beautiful, beautiful disaster. And as things change next year, I fare thee well, you beautiful division.
The road has got a couple potholes in it. There's some gravel. You know what I mean? Maybe the lines aren't painted exactly straight on there. But, yeah, bon voyage as we welcome in some fantastic new teams in the West. So rolling it forward, so here on 4th and Gold, a couple of announcements really quick. This is not our final episode of the season. We are going to come back. We are going to react to some of the bowl action, talk some general college football. And, Brock, I mean, forgive me, but typically, when we talk about it, that 6 wins, it's all about bowl eligibility. You get that 6th win, you're there. Explain to the good people, because you're so dialed in, Minnesota's sitting at 5 wins. What does this mean? And the Gophers are playing a bowl game, correct?
This is what it means. It means God bless you, the Hawaii Fighting Rainbows, because they beat Colorado State on a walk-off field goal. I believe it was 52-yarder, leaving Colorado State shy of that 6-win mark, meaning there was one final slot remaining that was not filled because there weren't not enough 6-win teams. And what the NCAA does is they look at all of the 5-win teams, and whoever has the best grades gets the slot. It doesn't happen terribly often. Usually there's one. I can't even think of a year where there's been 3 or more. Rutgers made it to a bowl game a couple years ago because of this. And Minnesota had the best grades, so they get granted that final slot. It will be a very early bowl game. It will probably be against a non-Power 5 opponent. But a bowl game is a bowl game. And what every coach will tell you is if you're not playing on January 1st or after, then the most important thing are those practices. You get granted 15 extra practices. And if you look at this Gopher team, you see a lot of youth. You see a coach who would love 15 more opportunities to fine-tune some things before heading into spring ball. So thank you so much to the great state of Hawaii. Thank you so much to your great football team. Thank you for whoever that kicker is. I hope he's on scholarship because he is the reason that the Gophers are going bowling.
That's a great point. I should have also thrown in, you could send your Christmas presents to Colorado State for losing. Or send them to Hawaii too, as well for them winning.
Yes.
Because, yeah, I mean, hey, the Gophers are bowling, baby. There's nothing wrong with that. So make sure everyone sticks around because when they release the bowl schedule December 3rd, we're going to try and hop on. Maybe just do a quick reaction to who that opponent's going to be, and then stick around. We are going to react to the action after the Gophers play that bowl game. Before we get to some general college football, Brock, I did want to ask you a couple of questions a little bit more about what's down the road for the Minnesota Gophers. And just really quickly, I would love to have a quick conversation and get your perspective now that we can kind of look back on the season that Athan Kaliakmanis has had. I don't think we're here to plant our flag on the level of extremes, right? But my question for you is kind of centered around a little bit of here's a guy who is only a sophomore. Here is a guy that when we talk about injuries on this team, played almost every single snap, if not every single snap for this team. And we did see some growth moments at times in some of these games, as well as we did see some growing pains. So my question for you is, where do you think Minnesota as a program stands on Athan Kaliakmanis? Is it we're going to stick with this guy, let him grow through our program? Where do you think PJ Fleck's mind is right now? Or do you think they kind of start flirting with the portal a little bit and see what's out there? Where do you land on that?
The flirting has already happened. The transfer portal. I can never keep track of when the portal is open and closed and who can be in it and
Yeah.
who can be offered, who can't. It's a mess. I've tried so hard to get a strict schedule. The schedule's always changing. So the fact of the matter is, there are quarterbacks. I won't say what school or what player because you never know until it's official. But there are quarterbacks that are currently in the portal who have tweeted out that Minnesota has offered them in the past 24 hours. So the decision's been made that they're not moving on from Athan, but they're going to bring in some competition, which I think is completely fair. It's a different era of football. If this was 2010, Athan would have struggled this year, and then everyone would have said, okay, he'll get better next year, and we'll see if things get better. And if by the midpoint it's not better, then we'll see some true freshman that got brought in and see what he can do. This is a new day, and you're on a 1-year season. And after that I'm sorry. You're on a 1-year career is kind of the way to put it. And after that 1 year, you say, is my career at Minnesota over? Do I go somewhere else or do I stick it out? Because every single team is going to be so different year to year that you're not really building on a string. It's kind of just a bunch of pieces. So they're going to bring in some competition. I'm sure there's a freshman or two that'll come in as well. And PJ Fleck early on was doing right by Athan by not giving up on him because there was so much that he had shown in regards to the physical abilities and the mental abilities takes time to come along. Like you said, he's a sophomore, but he's an inexperienced sophomore. Played sparingly down the stretch a year ago, but it's a completely different dynamic when it's your team. So I don't know what Athan does. If one of these transfer portal quarterbacks that are offered commit, I'm sure there will be more offers out there as other players enter. That's part of the process. And that's for every position. It's just that quarterback is the face of the team, so it's going to be a little more publicized. If Athan decides to move on, best of luck to him. Personally, I'd be shocked if he does. I would love for him to stay. I'm still a believer in him, but he does need competition to push him. There was no competition for him in spring from day one. From the second that Tanner Morgan got injured last year against Illinois in week 10, maybe it was Athan's team. So going into this offseason with some competition will be better for him. I really hope that he stays, and I hope whoever transfers in is ready to compete, and the best man wins.
I think it's very fair to expect. I think he's completing 53% of his passes this year. 14 touchdowns is fine. You'd like it to be a little bit higher. The 9 interceptions, you'd like to see it go down. Obviously, obvious stuff. My follow-up question for you, and I'm curious to see, as a former player, not just a quarterback, but as a former player who played in the NFL too as well. My follow-up question is, do you like that? Now, look, we're always going to have competition at all of our position groups, right? That's what makes us all better. The iron sharpens iron. I totally get it. But when we're talking about maybe the evolution and the maturation of the quarterback, is this healthy? Is this healthy? Now, I'm not trying to get on and beat the drum and defend Athan Kaliakmanis necessarily, but like as you said, there used to be programs where a kid could stay in one program, and by that senior year, something clicks, and you start to see the full potential of the player. With the transfer portal now, I'm all up for competition, but does the rearranging of the deck chairs with quarterbacks around the country, does this hurt the progression of the quarterback in your opinion?
100%. And I'll draw an example because coaches like to play the victim in the transfer portal situation. Wake Forest head coach. So Sam Hartman was their longtime starter, and then he transfers to Notre Dame, right? Notre Dame's final home game this year, they play like a long farewell video for Sam Hartman, senior night, and all this stuff. And the Wake Forest coach caught wind, and at a press conference the following week, went on and said, it's so sad because you spend all this time recruiting a guy, then you offer him, then you develop him, and then the second he gets a bigger opportunity, he transfers to Notre Dame, and Notre Dame is the one that gets to send him off. And I understand that, but let's look at the flip side of things. What about a player like Athan Kaliakmanis, who gets recruited, had offers and interest from bigger schools, decides to go to Minnesota, expecting to get developed. The second that not the second, but he gets a year to show his stuff, it doesn't go right. What does Minnesota do? They go right to the portal, right? So it's a double-edged sword depending on how you look at it. Either side can be the victim depending on what lens you look at it through. All that is to say, the answer is no. Let's face it, all the decisions that have been made in regards to realignment have been for money. That's the fact of the matter.
Mm-hmm.
What comes with that money, along with NIL, is you're going to spend the money. And the alumni or whoever is running each NIL collective, they want to compete, because what's the point of competing if you don't want to win? And all of it used to be student athletes over here, money over here. Were there some crossover that was technically illegal at the time? Of course. But now that the floodgates are open, it's professionalization, right? Now you're not just a quarterback who's a student, who's a kid, who's going to mature and leave a man, maybe with some stats to his name. Now it's you're an employee, even though legally you're not considered one. If you have an IT job and you don't do well after a year, they're going to replace you. If you're a teacher and all your kids are failing after a year, they're going to replace you. So we just have to look at it through a different lens. I'm still working on it. I still find myself seeing it through the eyes of me being 17, going to Minnesota, leaving as a 21-year-old. And that's just not what college football is anymore. It's just going to take change. I personally see it as a sad thing, but what's the point of looking at it as a sad thing if that's the way it's going to be going forward? So very long-winded answer, but it's definitely emotionally something that I still have to come to terms with.
Well, no, I mean, the answer deserves, it deserves its length because it's incredibly complicated, right? I think we can't just point to the success stories of quarterbacks like a Jaden Daniels, or even go back a little bit further when, Justin Fields goes from Georgia to Ohio State. When the stars transfer, it works. When the guys that maybe work a little bit more around the margins and turn into these one-year mercenaries, you do have to ask yourselves, are they getting not just the best college experience, but also they getting the best football, the best football training and experience that they possibly can to be the best players that they can? And then it matriculates up, are we getting the best type of quarterback play? Or really, let's stretch it out to really any kind of position. Are we getting the best kind of play as it moves on to the NFL? I think it's a question worth asking and looking forward to, as we move on. But that's what's new, and as you mentioned, that's what's new and interesting about the transfer portal. We don't really know, right? It's like one of those scientific method experiments where you're like, we don't really have the data for like 8 years. We just kind of started doing this now, and as you move on, you kind of figure it out, and then you get a little bit more of a better sample size as you get a little bit further out. I want to hit you with some lightning round stuff before we get out of here really quick. Your reaction, Ohio State, Michigan. What'd you think? Did it live up to the hype? Because it did for me.
It absolutely did, and I feel for Ryan Day because that is such a rabid fan base who is going to be so cruel to him if they don't make it to the playoff, which the way that things are shaking, they need a lot of help. So it's unfair, but at the same time, you cannot lose to an interim head coach.
Oh, that's a great point. And unfortunately, it did come down to the running game a little bit, and then of course Kyle McCord's. Did you like the play of Kyle McCord just really quick in that game? I felt like it was a little uneven. He got a little bit on a heater there in the second half, but again, something that's kind of plagued him all season: turnovers at the wrong times. Is that a fair way to put it?
Exactly. That's exactly what it was. I would say that game was in line with how he's played all year. He just happened to be playing what most would consider the best defense in college football.
Mm-hmm. So the next one for you is the Big Ten championship game, Michigan at Iowa. So if Iowa just never lets Michigan get the ball, is that even mathematically possible? I'm trying to think of ways to wrap my head around. Does Iowa have any shot in this game? I kind of don't see it. If Michigan gives you 1 to 2 drives, I don't think Iowa can keep up. Does Iowa have a shot to win the Big Ten championship?
No, and they know that. But you know what? The fact that they made it through this entire year is already a win. Like Kirk Ferentz has already won a championship. They are playing with house money. They could lose 100-0, and it's already like a movie worthy of a Disney Channel. Like it makes no sense. They're gonna lose. They're gonna lose badly, but they're gonna do it with their heads held high because who thought that they could make it this far?
Will they give up more than 20?
I say the first half. I could see a situation where they hold Michigan to 14 points in the first half, but eventually the levee breaks, and I'll say the score is 27-3.
There you go. Okay, well, 27-3. Yeah, no, they're definitely like an episode of Ripley's Believe It or Not. It's really been truly incredible. Every single week, the points total keeps going a little bit lower. Like Vegas is literally daring them and enticing people to just keep going under and under and under, and they keep smashing it. So I mean, yeah, and good for them. They definitely deserve it, and obviously, whether they get wiped by Michigan or not, I think they have a lot to be proud of for this season. Final one for you, Brock, before we get out of here. I asked this for you to come in before the show. It is almost Christmas time, and so when we're talking Gopher football, we're writing our letters to Santa, if you will. I'm going to ask you, Brock Vereen, when it comes to Minnesota Gopher football moving forward, what do you want for Christmas for the program?
Oh, boy. On my list, first is wide receivers. Chris Altman-Bell is leaving. Daniel Jackson, I believe, could take another year. I wouldn't be shocked if he left based on how he finished the year. He has absolutely worked his way to an NFL prospect. So I as a football fan, I want him to, as a college football fan, I want him to come back. As a fan of him as a person, I want him to leave. They'll have to replace Corey Crooms as well, who did a lot of work out of the slot. So give me, in a dream scenario, on my list is 2 wide receivers, a cornerback, a pass rusher, and you can never have enough running backs in the Gopher room, so 1 more running back. That's on my list.
And a partridge in a pear tree. And goodwill towards men. Why
Exactly.
not? Let's throw that in there too as well.
Yes.
I'm going to sign that to Santa right there. Yeah, and look, and that's what's so interesting about the Big Ten, right? Is I think that Minnesota's not the only team in this boat, right? I think, I also host the show for Northwestern. Northwestern's had a great season. They gave the interim head coach the full-time tag. Congratulations, good for him. But guess what? They got to turn over the quarterback. They got to turn over the running back. They got to turn over probably both wide receivers, plus A.J. Henning, who's a sixth-year senior. Yeah. So, I mean, with this transfer portal, too, as well, keep in mind, college football fans and Gopher fans out there, is that there are a lot of opportunities. But, again, this turnover keeps happening over and over again, and you just got to get back in there, and you got to recruit. You got to make it happen. You got to build the best team that you possibly can. I think that's going to do it for Fourth and Gold, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. We are going to hopefully return when we get the reveal of the bowl selection. We'll see who the Gophers are going to play, at what time, and where. Thank you so much for tuning in. Follow us at Beyond the Big Ten, wherever you get your socials online. We are your exclusive place for great, fantastic college football content and also college basketball content, also in the mix too as well. Minnesota Gophers, a little bit better than last year, guys. A little bit better out of the gate. We're feeling pretty good. Last year was tough. Last year was really tough, though, Brock, right? I mean, like, the bar is kind of low a little bit right now. They're playing a little bit better. So make sure you check her out and stick that out. Brock Vereen, our co-host here, you can check him out on that other pregame show every single weekend, doing fantastic content, also for CBS Network. Brock, man, great to see you. Great show, and we'll see it. We'll see you a little bit towards the end of the year. We got one more in us to talk some Gopher football, and hopefully we'll talk about some winning Gopher football in a bowl game.